I've never believed in demons, but I believe that people could become worse than any fictional evil spirits. My father was a priest, and his death, or rather what was left of his body, made me question everything I knew. It all started with cassettes. After the funeral, I was sorting things out in his office and found a box labeled clinical materials. 1988, 1992. There were dozens of VHS tapes inside. The first one had a label, Subject 14, Exorcism, Phase 3-inch. I put the tape in an old TV. The screen turned to snow, and I saw my father. A young man about 30 years old in a black cassock. A girl was sitting on a chair in front of him, about 12 years old, in a hospital gown. Her hands were chained to the armrests, and on her head was a device resembling a welding mask. Repeat after me. My name is Laura Addison. His father's voice sounded mechanical, as if he were reading instructions. The girl screamed, an inhuman roar that shook the speakers. She jerked, and the camera fell. In the last frame, her face is pressed to the floor. The eyes are completely black without whites. I turned off the TV. In the silence, I heard the creak of floorboards upstairs. The next day, I went to the city library to find references to Laura Addison. I found a note in the newspapers in 1991, The Arsonist Girl. Laura, 12, burned down her house, killing her parents and brother. After the trial, she was transferred to a closed clinic for spiritual rehabilitation. Next to the note is a photo of my father. Signed, Chaplain of the Sanio Project. In the evening, I called the clinic. Dead beeps. Then I went to the address from the article. The building looked like a prison. Bars on the windows, barbed wire. The door was open. Inside there is desolation. Mold on the walls, broken bunks, and in the principal's office, my childhood photo. On the back, Subject 14B, Successful Integration. There was a diary nearby. Father's notes. October 22nd, 1991. Laura won't budge. I had to use a sedative X. After the injection, she named the next victim her brother. October 29th, 1991. Laura's brother has been delivered. The transfer procedure has begun. November 15th, 1991. Subject 14B, Jacob, demonstrates stability. Laura has been eliminated. I dropped the diary. Eliminated. Transfer. Jacob. Warm liquid dripped from the ceiling. I looked up, and there was hair hanging on the ventilation grate. Long blonde hair, like Laura's on the tape. At home, I searched my old mattress. There's a scar under the springs. Horizontal, from the left shoulder to the right hip. Surgical. I called my mother. She was silent for a minute, then said, "Your father wanted to save you. Have you been ill?" "With what?" I shouted. "With my life." She hung up. I found a package in the garage. Inside is a baby jumpsuit with the name Lucas Addison and an audio cassette. The father's voice. Day 47. Jacob doesn't remember Lucas. Consciousness is stable. The body does not show rejection. We'll start the substitution phase tomorrow. I broke the mirror. There was a wall under it. I punched until my hand was swollen. The drywall cracked, revealing a niche. There's a doll inside. My face, stitched with Laura's face. There was a key around the doll's neck. It has an engraving on it, morgue. Storage 14-inch. I'm writing this now in a car parked outside an old clinic. My father's pistol is in the glove compartment. There's a key and a photo of Lucas in my pocket. My brother. If this door opens, I'll know whose body I'm wearing. The door to the morgue creaked like a bone snapped in half. I inserted the key, feeling the tremor in my hands transfer to the cold metal. It smelled of formalin and something sweet inside, like in a dentist's office before drilling. The light of the lantern picked out rows of refrigerator boxes from the darkness. Each one has a number on it. I approached 14, but before I pulled the pen, I noticed a folder on the table. The Sanio Project. The finale. Inside is a photo of my father surrounded by men in black coats. They were standing by the operating table where I was lying. Just me. About 5 years old with an open chest. In place of the heart is a device resembling a gear pump. A note from his father. Lucas' memories were deleted today. Jacob is clean now. If you are reading this, it means that the mechanism has failed. Go back to room 7A. That's your exit. I yanked on the refrigerator handle. The cold steam burned his face. Inside was my father's body. But not what we buried. It was a different him. Younger. Without the appendicitis scar he got when I was 10 years old. A dictaphone was sticking out of the pocket of his robe. I press play. The protocol is completed. Jacob considers himself a human being. Laura is destroyed. But if he finds room 7A, activate the rebirth protocol. The lock clicked behind him. I turned around and there was a man in a black robe standing in the doorway. The face is covered with a welder's mask. He picked up a syringe with a cloudy liquid. Dad asked me to tell you, you were his best project. I threw the recorder in his face and ran for the exit. He grabbed my jacket and the syringe went into my shoulder. I elbowed him in the throat, broke free, and crashed into the hallway. Room 7A turned out to be a children's room. Toys, a bed with straps, my drawings on the wall. Family, father, mother, me, and a girl with black eyes. Laura. There was a backpack in the corner. Inside there are children's clothes with the name Lucas and a letter. If you're reading this, I'm dead. They implanted a piece of Laura in you. Look for the seam behind the left ear. Tear it up. She knows a way out. I ran my fingers over the skin. The seam. Small, neat. I poked at it with my fingernail, and the threads snapped. The pain hit my temple, and the world turned upside down. Other people's memories floated before my eyes. Laura in a cage, my father with a knife, me, no, Lucas, crying in the corner. Ventilation. Laura's voice sounded in my head. They're coming through the ventilation. I climbed on top of the closet, tore off the grate, and dived into the tunnel. The metal cut my palms, but I crawled until I fell into the back room. On the table are the keys to the truck with the clinic's logo. I ran out into the parking lot. The truck started up with a half turn. The lights of the chase flashed in the mirror. I went to the highway, not knowing where. But Laura knew. Her voice guided me. Turn off here. Stop by the river. I got out of the car. There was a stone on the shore with an inscription, Laura Addison, 1979, 1991. The moonlight fell on the water, and I saw my reflection. For a second, the eyes turned completely black. I clutched my head, trying to force her voice out of my mind. But Laura didn't leave. Her presence was like a toothache, dull, aching, imminent. Go along the river. There's a cave there. It sounded insistently in my skull. The sand crunched underfoot. The wind whistled in my ears, mingling with Laura's whisper. The entrance to the cave was blocked with rocks, but I crawled through the gap. Inside there is a rusty door with an emergency exit sign. I picked the lock with a broken nail. Behind the door was a room plastered with newspapers, clippings about missing children, my school photo, and dozens of vials of pills, San-X, Red-Res 9, Stabilizer K14. There was a dictaphone on the table. I pressed play. Day 203. Jacob began to remember Laura. I injected a double dose of stabilizer. If this does not help, you will have to activate the implant. The mother agrees to the replacement procedure. The father's voice. The date is 1 week before his death. Laura stirred in my mind like a parasite under my skin. They implanted my hippocampus in you, the part of the brain where memories are stored. And as long as you breathe, I live, her words echoed in my temples. I broke the vials, trampling the pills into the dust. I noticed a backpack with provisions and a map in the corner. There are marks on it. Laboratory 2, field tests, quarantine zone. Go to the quarantine area, Laura ordered. Why? Your mother is there. And my body. The journey took 3 hours. The zone turned out to be an abandoned village. Houses with boarded-up windows, a playground where swings creaked in the wind. The central building has a red cross and the inscription, Quarantine 1991. It smelled rotten inside. Gas masks, syringes, and empty San-X packages were scattered on the floor. There's a photo report on the wall. Children in identical pajamas, tied to beds. The last picture is of me. They put a needle in my eye. They were erasing us piece by piece, Laura whispered. Memory first, then the face. Then, the slam of the door behind him made me turn around. His mother was standing in the doorway. In his hands is a hunting rifle. You shouldn't have come here, she said, her voice shaking. I was trying to protect you. From what? I stepped forward. From the truth. She shot at the ceiling. Plaster fell on my head. Your father wanted to create perfect soldiers. Children who don't remember pain. But Laura, she ruined everything. Infected the project with emotions. Where is she? The mother pointed the gun at the door marked morgue. There. And your freedom. The refrigerators in the morgue were empty, except for one thing. Laura Addison, experiment 1 inch. I pulled the handle. The ice fell off, revealing the girl's face from the tape. Her skin was scarred from stitches, and there was a bullet hole in her forehead. "Now you see," Laura's voice sounded from all corners of the room. "We're a mistake, and the only way to fix it is..." The mother put a new cartridge in the gun. "Your father left you a choice. Live with it in your head, or die." The glass of the refrigerator cracked. Laura opened her eyes. Black, bottomless. Laura didn't move. Her eyes remained open, glassy like a fish on ice. My mother lowered the gun, and I realized that this was not a resurrection. It's a message. He implanted her retina in your eyes. My mother ran her hand over my face, so you can see what she saw. These black spots, they are not demons. These are holes, places where the memory was erased. She took a flashlight out of her pocket and shone the beam into my pupils. Pain shot through my skull, and I saw. Laura runs down the hallway of the clinic. He holds a bloody scalpel in his hand. She bursts into the operating room, where the father is bent over the child. "My clone. No more children," she screams, plunging the blade into her throat. Her death was a protest. The mother turned off the flashlight. "But your father didn't get everything out of her yet." She went over to Laura's body and took off the key-shaped pendant from her neck. "This access opens the archive. There are files on everyone they fixed. Your friends, your teachers, even that girl you had a crush on in college. They are all products of the project." I grabbed the pendant, but my mother clutched it to her chest. "A choice. Burn the archive and live with the lie. Or open it and find out that you're not the first Jacob." The glass of the refrigerator cracked louder. Laura collapsed to the floor, her body crumbling like a doll made of ashes. There was a hatch under it. "It leads to the vault." Laura's voice became weak in my head. "But if you come in, they'll activate the protocol." The mother raised her gun. "Decide. I won't let you destroy our world." I threw the pendant into the hatch and jumped after it. The bullet pierced my shoulder, but I was already falling down the metal stairs. The storage turned out to be a server room. Monitors, buzzing hard drives, boxes of films. There is a list of names on the screen. Jacob Wright, version 3.1. Jacob Wright, version 4.7. Video recording on the central computer. My father injects a black liquid into my vein. I'm convulsing, and he's calmly dictating. Subject 14G is showing aggression. I recommend a replacement. The mother agrees to the procedure. Next to it is a box with discs. Replacement of 14-08/12/2023. I inserted the disc. Our house is on the screen. My mother is in the kitchen chopping vegetables. I walk in the door. Not me. Another. He kisses her on the cheek and then pulls out a knife. "It's going to happen in 3 days, Laura barely whispered. "They will replace you when the service life ends." There was a phone on the table. The only contact is the curator. I dialed the number. "Has the protocol been completed?" A man's voice answered. "Yes, I imitated my father's voice. 14G recycling is needed. A place. The river. In an hour." I hung up the phone and grabbed the gas tank from a corner. Laura laughed in my head one last time. I doused the servers with gasoline, set fire to a rag, and threw it into a puddle of fuel. Flames hit the ceiling. Tongues of fire licked off the wires, and the screens exploded in sparks. Smoke filled the room, but I didn't run. I stood and watched as the folders with my faces burned, dozens of Jacobs in photos, in documents, on disintegrating films. Laura was silent. She probably burned down with me. I went out through the ventilation to the street. The night was starry. The air smelled of pine, not burning. I was walking towards the river, bleeding from a wound, when the truck's headlights blinded me. Jacob Wright. A man in a black suit got out of the cab. 2 men with suitcases followed him. "You passed the final test." "What test?" I leaned against a tree, clutching the bloody pendant. "A loyalty test." He opened the suitcase. Inside are syringes, vials, and a picture of my girlfriend. No, not mine. Her clone. "You destroyed the archive to protect the project." My father would have been proud. I grabbed a lighter from my pocket. "Don't," the man chuckled. "We know that you will throw it in gasoline. This has already happened 17 times. He took out his tablet and started the video. I was in the same clothes, in the same place, throwing a lighter. Explosion. Then there's more footage of me shooting myself, throwing myself under a truck, and drowning in a river. Dozens of versions of my death. You are version 23. The most persistent, he snapped his fingers. The mother got out of the truck. A fresh scar on his temple, where I shot in the vault. She's part of the system, too. Just like you. I pressed the lighter. Spark. But the flame did not flare up. You were created to burn. The man turned to the truck. Until the next cycle. They're gone. I was left standing with a dead lighter in my hand. I'm writing this in my house right now. Mom is cooking breakfast in the kitchen. On the table is a newspaper with the headline, "Fire in Abandoned Laboratory, No Deaths." I went to the mirror, put my fingers in my mouth, and pulled down. The skin on his cheek tore, exposing the metal frame. Wires instead of muscles. Cameras instead of eyes. Laura laughed in my head. She didn't leave. She couldn't leave. "Welcome home," she said. I sewed up my face with threads from a first aid kit and sat down at the table. My mother put a plate in front of me. Strawberry jam. My favorite. I looked out the window. There's a truck with black windows in the yard. They're waiting. I finished the jam and went out into the yard. The truck was still parked, the engine purring softly. The driver, the man in the black suit, was leaning against the hood, smoking. Decided. He threw the butt of his cigarette at his feet. I nodded, not because I gave up, because I realized that every step I take, every rebellion, even this thought is part of their algorithm. They predicted me like the weather. "I want to see him," I said. He grinned and opened the truck door. I was sitting in the car behind the glass, the one from the video in the archive, version 4.7. He was smiling at me and holding a photo of my girlfriend. Her girlfriend. "You're going to train him," the man in the suit said. "How your father trained you." I was pushed into a truck. Version 4.7 extended his hand. "Hello, brother." I hit him. I broke my nose. Blood splattered on the glass, but he continued to smile. "Okay," said the man in the suit, writing something down in a notebook. "Aggression is normal. Now I live in a white room with a half-wall mirror. They're on the other side. Sometimes they bring in clients, parents who want to replace deceased children. I'm teaching 4.7 how to pretend to be human, how to cry at a funeral, how to kiss your mother on the cheek, even if you want to strangle her. Today we brought a new version, 5.0. Her face is an exact copy of Laura. Let's start with the basics," I say, turning on the camera. "Repeat after me. I love you, Mom." She repeats. Her voice trembles perfectly. I look in the mirror. There behind the glass, the old me, version 1.0, is convulsing, wiping his face with a file. It has already been replaced. But I didn't spare the gas. Not then.